In the last set of videos, we introduced what React is, we got the development environment set up, and we just got a taste of it, just messed around with it a little bit. In this series of videos, I want to talk about what makes React React, what makes it unique, and how it's different than some of the other languages we might use. So let's start by building a folder that we're going to work out of. So I'm going to this time come into my C drive. I obviously need to buy a new drive. Too many dang videos is the problem. So C drive, and then to the users folder, and then to your username, and then in the source folder, this is where our .NET projects are, repos, and then in here I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this one, I gotta think of something, and my son likes to use this word with me. I'll say something and he'll say that's cap, right? Or no cap. So let's name our folder no cap. So I'm going to come in here, name this folder no cap. No cap React, let's call it. All right, no cap React. And then in there, eventually what we're going to have is a setup where the something is on the back end. So I'm going to create a back end folder, and then React is going to be on the front end. And so now I've got these two different folders in here, and I can put my React stuff in here, and .NET or whatever else I'm using in my backend folder, and that way it's easier to update in GitHub and wherever we're using it. All right, so we've got that set up. Let's open Visual Studio Code, VS Code for short. I still have my old project open, so I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to navigate to this new folder. So I'll make this full screen until we split in a minute, but open folder, and I'm going to navigate out to that same place. So C drive, users, username, source, repos, no cap React, and that's the folder I'm going to select. All right, do I trust the author? Do I trust myself? Some days. Yes, I trust the authors. And then we've got our folder open now that we can go in and actually create our React app. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into the terminal, and just like we've done before the last time, we're going to create the default React app. And so if you don't remember that command, you will after running it a few times. This isn't one that I have to think too much about. So npx.create React app is what we do. And then where are we going to put it? Well, we want to put it in our front end folder that we've created. And notice we're currently at the no cap React folder. And then I'll say template space TypeScript. All right, so I hit the button, and that's going to start creating our little React app. And again, you could go in and create it manually, but why would you want to? There's so much to it that needs to come in and be set up in order for React to work correctly. And so why not just use this default template that's been provided for us? So that takes a minute to get loaded up. I just noticed Babel flash on the screen. That's the thing that's translating our JSX code into React code. I also saw ESLint. And so you're watching these packages come in. Now, as long as it's installing for a second, notice it's bringing in the React and then the React DOM. Let's talk about the DOM for a second. So the DOM, I was going to talk about this in a minute, but let's do it right now. The DOM stands for the Document Object Model, but we don't really use that term much. We just say the DOM. The DOM is the thing that you see. It's the web document that's being created that we're going to see. And so it's what we see on the screen eventually. One of the big things about React is that it uses something called a virtual DOM. It builds the DOM virtually, and then it checks to see how does that compare to the DOM that's actually on the screen, and it changes the components, only the ones that are different. If it's the same, it leaves it the same. And so this is one of the big deals. This is one of the things that makes React run so quickly, is that it's doing this comparison, virtual DOM versus DOM, what elements need to change in order to update the actual DOM from this virtual DOM. All right, so we've got that set up. Now, part of the setup that we did last time was going in and installing Prettier and ESLint and whatnot. Now, if we come in and look now, they're already installed. We installed those globally. They should be set up and ready to go. And so we shouldn't need to do anything other than if we want those same rules in force, then in our front end folder, which now has stuff in it, then we would want to create a, so let's see, new file, and we'd want to create our .eslint RC file. And if we follow those same rules, which again, you may like some of them, you may not like some of them, you can change them to be whatever you want to, but our kind of default setup is to say, here's the set of rules in this ESLint RC file. First of all, we're going to extend, and then you'll recall we had a couple of different entries in there. One was for, let me put this out, and so one was for the React app, and then the other one was for the plugin :prettier / recommended. Okay, so that's our first entry, and then we have in here some rules. This was after this, so let me put a comma. So we had our rules, and the rules were, as you'll recall, we said Prettier / prettier : and then square brackets again, error, comma, and then we had end of line auto. All right, and end of line should be in quotes as well. All right, so this was our kind of default setup. I'll save. All right, it goes and formats it nice. And then we also want to have our Prettier, so new file, Prettier, .prettier RC. Now, if you don't put the extension on, it's going to still recognize it as the Prettier RC, and so that's what's recommended. But you can say prettierrc.json, and it will find it that way too. So in here we have the opening, closing curly braces, and then we put in a few elements. So print width, and you could see that if you didn't want to do this every time, you could have a default file saved somewhere you just copy in. But for my purposes, it's nice to redo it to emphasize it. So our print width is going to be 80. That means we're going to go down to a new line when we get 80 characters out. Change our double quotes into single quotes. Semicolons, add them at the end of the line if we don't have them and need them. Tab width is 2. The trailing comma is the one I'm not sure about. I guess that's probably, I see it, but it just adds a trailing comma on the line in case we're going to put another entry so we don't ever get an error where we don't have a comma. And then end of line auto, and end of line was maintain existing. Mixed values within one file are normalized by looking at what's used after the first line. Don't know exactly what that means, but we'll take it. Okay, so save that. It saves and it formats it nice. And now we should be ready to rock and roll. So we don't need to do any of the other stuff because we've already done it across the environment globally. And so we shouldn't need to do anything else in that regard. So again, to run it, we just come down and say npm start. But we're not in the right folder, right? This is a common thing. We look and see we're in the NoCap React folder. We need to cd into the front end folder where all the files are. And actually the one it's looking for specifically is this package.json file. And then I say npm start there. And it should pop up our window here. And it does. And so I'll move into the split screen again so that I can, where is my window? There we go. So that when I make changes, we can watch those update. Uh-oh. Compiled with problems. It's like my life. All right. Okay, let's figure out what's going on in the next video since we're out of time. Spencer out.